The problem of climate change and its impact continues to ravage the world with devastating effects. Countries around the globe continue to see weather extremes causing economic and social problems for all sectors of society. The FCO's Special Advisor on Climate Change said there was a global change underway in which low-cost energy and food could no longer be seen as the norm.
They are the consequence of what increasingly looks like what you might call a modal shift in the nature of the global economy as we move from a period of generation in which basic commodities have been relatively plentiful and relatively cheap to one in which they will be inevitably relatively scarce and relatively expensive. A different kind of economy, a less comfortable economy to live in, a much more difficult economy for politicians to manage.
He said food, water, energy and climate were four pillars of climate security that were linked and had to be tackled together.
These are all interrelated pressures, and what's clear is that you can't have one without the other three: food, water, energy, climate security. And also, in an interdependent global economy, you can't have those things in one part of the world if you haven't got them in other parts of the world. And I think what we're actually experiencing is the early stages of that phenomenon. That phenomenon is going to press us ever harder. And diplomats for that.
Two of the FCO's main priorities on climate change are conflict resolution and building low-carbon economies.
We won't deal effectively with it if we don't understand its security dimension, but nor will we deal effectively with it unless we understand its prosperity dimension, and unless we can build a pathway that enables political and business and other kinds of leaders to say, actually, here's a way of getting quickly to low carbon that is good for prosperity, good for jobs and growth. So it's high growth, low carbon.
Over the next 3 years, the FCO is doubling resources to meet climate change priorities.
What we're working on now is not just deploying that resource in a kind of conventional way in terms of sort of it managing issues day to day, but to try and find a way of harnessing them into a much more, if I can call it, campaigning mode, much more focused on a very well-defined, precisely defined mission with strategic goals and objectives and a real sort of strategy to achieve those goals.
There now has to be a new way of thinking about climate change that would be transformational.
Within that large set of possible things you can do, there are always going to be a much smaller number of potentially transformational things, things that will open up new political space, create the possibility of bringing together new coalitions that can't be brought together under current conditions. And that's really the thinking that we're applying to this. And one of those campaigns we're calling climate security. It's to build the political impulse behind the security case for climate change.
While significant progress has been made, much more needs to be done.
Even in those countries where we have an active debate, including this one, about climate change, we are in the foothills of what we need to do, which will involve deconstructing and reconstructing in very fundamental ways the way our economy works, the way we produce and consume electricity, the way we achieve mobility, the way we use land, the way many of our industrial processes operate. Humanity has never tried to do anything on that scale in that short a time.
Overall, the FCO believes there needs to be a wartime-like mobilization if we are to seriously tackle the impact of climate change both now and in the future.